My name is Mike Leavitt, otherwise known as Remike. Why? Because Remike remakes things. Tonight we discuss the relationship of art and 3D printing. I'll tell you my story because it's a why not me story. Like, you can do this too. I am not an expert on 3D printing. I have my own filter on the art world. I have to teach a new business model to the art market just to make a living. I lean on the idea that each technology has its own promise. So what does 3D printing promise? Can it deliver? Because one of the promises is that you can do this too. I get into the space between art and product, like where do 3D prints fit in, and what does it really mean for a visual artist to get published? 3D printing 101, first of all. What the heck is 3D printing? Remember the thing in Star Trek that magically made a cup of coffee or a sandwich or something out of thin air? The Jetsons had one too. These things are not magic anymore. It's been around since like the 70s, but you might not have seen a 3D printed thing before tonight. The prints themselves have been in the news a lot recently, though. You've probably heard something about like 3D printed houses or prosthetics. That's been in the news. But the traveling with NASA. Yeah, we're like printing food on a spaceship, and Leonard Nimoy got to see it in his lifetime. 3D printing is really close to the 2D printer in your house. The most common kinds that's like right now at Office Depot and the ones they've got coming to the library here lay stuff down one tiny line at a time, just like this one right here. It's just like a regular 2D printer lays stuff down one tiny line at a time to build up sentences and words on a page. There's another kind of 3D printer that can take stuff away. A computer-controlled cutter can carve away at a solid block of something like wood or metal until an object appears. There's another kind. A computer-controlled printer can focus solar radiation. Are you with me here? Can focus sun rays, melt sand, and make glass objects that are technically 3D prints. And the very latest is something called Continuous Liquid Interface Production, CLIP or CLIP. A solid object is printed from a vat of liquid, like the liquid metal cop from Terminator 2. This one had me like rethink this whole presentation. If the speed and resolution of CLIP are as good as promised, this is definitely 3D printing's best hope yet. Quick note about printing really large things. Right now, it's hard to find a printer big enough to print the whole house or a Boeing 747 in one piece. So you just print the smaller parts, and then a human or a robot like puts them together. So, computers and machines can make three-dimensional objects in a few different ways. Most are additive, like clay sculpting or paper mache. Some are subtractive, like stone carving. The stuff these machines can build or carve is almost limitless. Pancakes, pizza, chocolate, sugar, wax, clay, glass, steel, bronze, and gold can all be printed. My own experience with this stuff. Let's start with my Star Wars-inspired political sculptures. If it seems like I have employees, I don't. I sculpt my statues by myself. I use regular tools and regular paints. I make things from scratch that look cheap. I make my statues from kids' clay and wood blocks. I make shoes from cardboard. I make trading cards at Kinko's. I spend months of painstaking labor on things that look outsourced to China. The shtick might be my only thing. I am here on Earth to make things and satirize consumerism. Something happens in the 1980s to the world and to myself. David Sirota argues in his book, Back to Our Future, that the 1980s explain everything. I just think of it like corporate omnipotence is here to stay. So what's art, what's product, what do products do to us? This is the muse I followed when I graduated from Evergreen in 2001. Then 9/11 happened. Then the second Iraq War made the influence of corporations a really hot topic. So I started the art army in 2002. Art toys and urban craft kind of got off around the same time, questioning the same line between art and product. I've scanned 3 of my Star Wars inspired sculptures. Printing can happen from scanning or 3D modeling. You can digitally sculpt in the computer. CGI and video game industry has made some great advances. I learned a program called ZBrush. It's not cheap, but there's a freeware version of Maya. To learn ZBrush, I took a YouTube class. I experimented for hours. At first, the intimidation was pretty hard to get over, learning a new language. It took some months. Slowly, the intimidation washes away. Last year, I had 0 expertise, 0 knowledge of 3D printing or software. I don't text message. I don't have a smartphone. If I can do this, you can download Maya, watch some YouTube, and send something off to a 3D printer. I have digitally modeled 2 different pieces fully on the computer. The first is the Hillary Clinton ready for action figure. I designed her in collaboration with Factory, the same folks who brought you the Obama action figure and my Banksy Art Army figure. Hillary is just about to be released in mass. The Kickstarter campaign to launch her just ended yesterday. The second piece I sculpted on the computer was a Pope ape I call the Holy See War. I sculpted this one in clay originally, and it was for a porcelain company based in France. I had to engineer an elaborate crate for shipping to get it to France. French customs decided it was a bomb. Then they destroyed my piece as if it went off like a bomb. I had to start again from scratch. I 3D modeled new version on the computer, and then I emailed the file to France. The French porcelain company will print a clay prototype, and from that clay prototype, they'll mold and cast to make reproductions traditionally from there on. I like the Shapeways.com business model for a few different reasons. Shapeways only makes things on demand. When I upload to Shapeways, they tell me the cost to print something. Usually it's about $30 a print. Then I get to decide my markup. Right now, I'm making about $5 a print. A popular piece on Shapeways is the sad little Keanu Reeves. Nothing is juried or curated. The staff won't fix your model, let alone edit anything. Shapeways does all fulfillment, customer service, quality control, and shipping. The 3D model itself is creating a little life of its own with a growing number of online libraries of free printable 3D files. Thingiverse is one to check out. You should also know about a friend of mine named Joe Mena. Joe is a classically trained sculptor and genius 3D modeler. My last experience is with my friend Fernando Sosa. Fernando got some press recently. A Katy Perry performer in an animal costume at this last Super Bowl's halftime show got famous overnight for being a bad dancer. Fernando quickly 3D modeled the, quote, left shark holding a bottle of booze. Katy Perry's lawyers sent a cease and desist. Fernando's fighting back. Intellectual property and rapid prototyping collide. What does 3D printing promise? Let's parse out the term 3D print a little bit more. The word print suggests something else. The printing press got big 500 years ago. Since then, we have this idea of making many multiples of one thing. This really changed us. Publishing is another word for it. Now, self-publishing happens with open source, open platform, user-generated, do-it-yourself, DIY technologies. Printing press and your home 2D printer are just more automation. Less work by human hands. So is 3D printing. Most things today are made in China with human hands. These hands are usually paid poorly. That's how we afford to buy cars and couches. So we automate things to spread things out really fast. The printing press got big on this. Dispersing ideas inspires artists and creators. This is how reproductions themselves form a community. This is how the Bible made it big. This is how the Quran made it big. The printed word became a thing. The printed press became a thing. Printed images, sound recordings, and then the printed thing became a thing. Recorded music, photography, video recordings of theater are bigger than live music, art, and theater because reproductions spread the word. 3D printing gives hope to a do-it-yourselfer. It saved me from shipping hell in France. The dream of rapid prototyping is coming true. Not everything needs to be made in China. Some American jobs could come home. A virus can sell and distribute things. Being disruptive is now like a good thing. Technology is awesome when it's democratic. Open platforms promise a lot for the 21st century. My work focuses on the human form. It's easy to criticize because the physical form we know best is our own human body. It's the biggest challenge to sculpt for an artist or a computer. Printing human figures really tests the technology. Bad resolution, rough surface texture have been big issues for 3D printing. So is the actual time it takes to make a 3D print, especially for large-scale manufacturing. This new liquid interface production thing could solve this stuff. But if 3D printing promises more automation, is this another bad robot replacing humans with machines? Or is this a friendly R2-D2? To domesticate manufacturing for our greater good. The question is, why does 3D printing matter to artists? Almost 100 years ago, Marcel Duchamp made a toilet into art. Jackson Pollock spilled paint as art. Andy Warhol's studio is called The Factory, with laborers making art like products. Jeff Koons' everyday kitsch is high art. Just ideas are art. You don't even have to make anything anymore. So that means the art world accepts anything as art, right? I showed Jonathan Levine Gallery in Manhattan when I released 3D prints of sculptures that debuted at his gallery. Jonathan was confused. The art world understands editions. It can separate prints from originals. Limited edition toys are okay. Artist-designed toys have a big collector base nowadays. But anyone can get a 3D printer, so anyone can do 3D prints. Well, what about like the design by committee and the checks and balances of publishers and manufacturers and distributors? Don Thompson's book, The $12 Million Stuffed Shark. Premise number one, the art market is driven by curious economics. There's no better business bureau for art. Premise number 2. The archetype of the singular, one-of-a-kind object is slowly fading. Editions of sculptures and paintings can be incredibly valuable. Sharing the printed word can be a communal activity. Some people want uniformity. They want the same thing everyone else is getting just for that feeling of comfort and security. A writer can self-publish, a musician can have downloads. What options does a visual artist have? Let's say your hometown art scene needs maturing. Even if you find a grant or a gallery, it's still just a limited few who fund the arts. What about the rest of the buying market? Even if you got something affordable to the mass market, you're still looking at usually like a 5% royalty or less. It's really hard to close that gap, geographic or otherwise, between making things and making money. That's why this whole topic of prints and editions matters. Some people think the arts should criticize technology from a safe distance. But musicians sell downloads, writers sell ads in their blogs, and artists have Etsy. Open platforms are nearly impossible to resist, especially if you want to challenge the top-down art market. Is art itself losing cultural relevance if its market can't evolve with the times? What are we doing here? When I was looking for pictures of 3D printed things to show you tonight, I found plenty of guns and weapons. Didn't want to show you. Shouldn't I show you everything is being published, no matter how illegal or taboo it is? How do we trust people to do the right thing with open platforms? Adult sex toys, drug paraphernalia, bomb parts can all be printed in your own house. A small network self-publishes a video and ISIS upends world politics. We good people doing good things should be just as empowered to self-publish our work. If ISIS can do it, we can do it too. On the other hand, in the future, will 3 dimensions even be relevant anymore? 3D media and virtual reality are becoming reality. Max Headroom was a virtual person. Descartes and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gave us the brain in the vat. Your digital 3D self could deliver your own eulogy. We might all be floating up into the cloud already. Brick and mortars are fading, especially in Seattle. How many times do you see someone around you buried in their iPhone? Soon that thing could be planted in your brain. The future could look like The Matrix or Wall-E. Humans could be released from physical mass, finally. Is this the original promise of all technology? To make life so easy that our body can just spend its life in a pod. We can just think to each other. We definitely won't need material objects. 3D printing could be the last technology to produce physical results, not just cerebral ones like Google searches and streaming videos and games. This could be our last tool on Earth. In addition to the humanitarian promises of accessible food and housing, prosthetic limbs, and heart valve implants, the arts define our spirit and soul. So, when an archaeologist in the distant future digs up the 3D printer, what do we want this tool to say about us?